Welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in again. My next guest is a great friend, George Lamb, who started his career many years ago as a music agent, looking after the likes of Lily Allen and who else now?
Audio Bullies.
Audio Bullies. And he's had a lot of time on TV, and he's very, 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 very good at all of that. But the thing that he's really, really passionate about is farming. He's pretty much the sexiest farmer you'll ever see out there. Georgie Lamb, welcome. Thank you for being our guest. How are you?
I'm all right, love. Thank you for having me. And yeah, it's lovely to be talking to you, and lovely to be thinking about the kind of possibilities now of, seemingly in the UK anyway, we're about to turn the corner and there's some light at the end of the tunnel, and we might be coming out of lockdown. And what does that look like? And how we can use it as an opportunity to reboot and to reset and to start doing things differently, and not just fall back into all those old rhythms and patterns that weren't really serving us.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons I'm having conversations with people now, is to say, one of the big things that came out of lockdown for me is to reframe how I use my time, and to ask the question, why did we get here as on a global level? And if it's not a clear message from above, which I believe it is, how are we going to individually and collectively make the changes that we need to come? Now, I know you're tuned into that way of thinking, as am I. And the conversation I've most had with people is, are you happy? Are you living the life that you want to live? And can you make some small changes to doing the thing that you were born to do? And a lot of people say, well, I don't know what I was born to do. And I say, well, what are you passionate about? So let's start with you. Your passion for this dear Mother Earth and the land. What are you doing with the wonderful initiative that is Grow?
So, like most people at some point in their life, you kind of look round and you take stock, and you assess whether or not you're having a good time and whether you're enjoying life. And I was very lucky. I was reasonably successful kind of commercially when I left school, and had a good run in the music industry, and then went into television. It all went quite well quite quickly. And when I was in my early 30s, I kind of took stock and really started to question who I was and what I was doing and how I was feeling about the whole thing. And if I'm honest, I wasn't feeling happy, and I wasn't feeling fulfilled, and even though I had all of the kind of trappings of what success is apparently meant to look like, my heart wasn't fulfilled, and I felt it was really kind of pointless. And so, I found myself, I was at a very fortunate intersection where I didn't have any kids, and I didn't really have any dependents, and I was on my own, and I had a bit of money in the bank, and I was just like, you know what, I'm going to change my life. And I sold my house, and I got rid of all my stuff, and I kind of renounced all worldly goods and all the rest of it, and headed off to the east, and had a few years where I was just pretty kind of loose, and started off with a bit of partying, but then ended up kind of a lot of introspective work and deeper inquiry into who I am and why I'm here. And that led me back to the UK, and getting heavily involved in community work. And then, whilst I absolutely saw the kind of the necessity and the need for what I was doing there, which was kind of working as a key worker in community, I got quite frustrated quite quickly, because I recognised that there was this seemingly kind of never-ending stream of half-dead bodies coming down the river that you could fish out and put a blanket on and give a cup of tea to, and then you turn around and there's another 5,000 coming down the river, and you just think, when does this end? And as I say, whilst I know there's merit in putting those blankets on, I'm much more the kind of person who wants to go upstream and wants to go to the source and see what the issue is and see how we can try to change that structurally. And I came to the conclusion through all of that trying to get adults to go in the same direction at the same time, short of the building being on fire, it's not only possible. And so really, if you want to change things at a kind of systems level, then the only way I can see to do it is to work in education. And as fortune would have it, a friend of mine had just become a head teacher at a great big failing state secondary school up in North London. And they were really having a tough time. Reputation had been challenging for kind of 20 years or whatever. They got down, they had less than 500 kids. They should have closer to 1,200. It was on its last legs, and the council, in all their wisdom, had agreed to build a £30 million super school literally at the end of the road, like less than half a mile away. And they were gradually letting this place kind of bleed out. And so my mate was looking for any competitive advantage that he could get over this other all singing, all dancing new school. And so I went to him and I said, look, I'm not quite sure what it is yet, but I know I want to do an education project, and I know I'd love to be involved in this school because I think what you're doing is wonderful. And they'd really started to turn it round over he'd probably been there a year or so by the time I started to get involved. And I was definitely still looking much more through the lens of kind of kind of disenfranchised, disengaged groups of people, and the kind of socio-economic lens for the whole thing. And then a mate of mine called me, and he'd written a book he'd written several books that had all been around plant medicine, and called me and said he was coming to London, and would I interview him about his new book? And I just assumed it was about plant medicine. I said, yeah, no problem. So he sent over Daniel Pinchbeck. And he wrote a kind of seminal book called Breaking Open the Head, which is really well worth a read if you're into that. And then he wrote this book called How Soon Is Now, which is about the ecological mega crisis. And obviously this is probably 3 and a bit years ago, so pre-Greta, pre-XR, all stuff that was in the news, but just stuff that quite easily I'd just kind of swipe away and knock out of, just out of my vision, and just, whatever, don't worry about it. 50 harvests left, that sounds terrible. 2% increase and we're all finished. Oh, that doesn't sound so good. Let's get some new trainers, and just kind of blinded by, or just taking any distraction I could to not deal with that stuff. Anyway, for whatever reason, on that day, on that sofa, I sat and I read this book first, and maybe the only time I'm ever going to do it in my life, but sat and read a book in a day, and all the information just came and went wallop on me. And I was just like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is really heavy duty. And actually, if kind of nothing like the end is nigh, to really sharpen up your kind of focus, and made me realize that actually all the other stuff that I was interested in and trying to help with and all the rest of it was arbitrary if we didn't have a planet, Quite. So actually, our main focus, before we get into, not to devalue anything else that's going on, and of course, there's lots of issues, but actually our main focus collectively, I believe, needs to be on balancing the equilibrium of the planet and getting it back in decent health before we can address everything else. And then the more I kind of go into it, the more I start to realize that actually it's the root of everything, and it's, we are of it and from it and with it, and our, irrespective of our differences as human beings, our, the only kind of irrefutable truth that we all have is our interdependence on Mother Nature's health, basically. And so even if we're really at loggerheads with one another, through trying to collectively sort it out, maybe, bit of a long shot, but maybe that's the thing that makes me think, oh, you know what, actually, you're not so bad after all, and maybe we could work together and we could find a resolution to this fucking drama that's been going, sorry for swearing, this drama that's been going on for the last, 500 years or whatever. And so I set up Grow as an education program to with a view to getting it into the national curriculum, we hope by 2030, and we teach kids. We've split it into 3 modules now. We're still refining it, but we split it into 3 principal modules, which are ground. So get yourself outside, get your hands in the dirt, and learn how to be self-sustainable. Think, which is about philosophical thinking. So rather than this, unfortunately, the one-size-fits-all education system tries to funnel kids through an exam system, so they knock all the critical and creative, expansive thinking out of the kids. So we're trying to reverse that. And get them thinking openly and debating and thinking expansively and critically and creatively. And we do that with the British Philosophy Foundation. And then we have Flow, which is about how do you tap into your superpower, right? We've all got it in us. We flow state, we've all been there. You're not quite conscious of how you're doing what you're doing, but you're doing it somehow. And actually getting to recognize that that's a thing. And so, yeah, that's what we're doing. We've got a 4th pillar, which is Thrive. So then Thrive's the extracurricular stuff. How do you take everything you've learned from Ground and Think and Flow? But I don't think I said actually Flow is kind of, breath work, meditation, mindfulness, yoga, movement, anything you can do to really get into your body. And And yeah, and then that, you know, this thrives. So we've got a basketball club, a boxing academy, a YouTube club. How do you take all those learnings and then put it into your everyday life? And
So can I ask you something? If we go back just to grow, which is the name of this amazing company that you set up, and you're in your 3rd year now, right?
just gone into it, yeah.
So Totteridge Academy now, I just want to go back to what you said at that point when it's failing. There's 500 kids and it should be 1,200 and there's money being thrown around, but they're just not putting the focus onto this school that could be brilliant. Where is it at now? And can you tell us a little bit about the growth stage, what the children actually do?
So as a school, we were in the bottom 10% for so you have two kind of principal metrics of success in a school. You have the league table, and you have a progress score. Now, of course, a school with a struggling reputation, with poor funding and all the rest of it, even I'm just talking within the state sector at the moment, will never do as well on the league table as your grammar school, for example, right? So there's no, you can't compare them like that. How you can compare schools, though, irrespective of where they sit on a kind of academic league table, is with a progress score. So all kids will enter the school system, the secondary school system, with a score, and they'll leave with a score. And so if you can quantify the difference between those two scores, like how much progress those kids have actually made. So if, for example, in a grammar school, they're taking all the kids in who are already high achievers academically, and they're not actually moving them all that much further, they don't get a big progress score. Whereas kids that we're getting in, they won't be doing so well academically. And now we've gone, for example, in the last 5 years, from being in the bottom 10% in the country for progress to being in the top 5%.
Wow.
Massive. Before we get into all the kind of anecdotal, well-being stuff and the more kind of holistic approach to teaching that the school does, just purely on a kind of measurable, kind of chart, like the school's excelling and could perhaps our head teacher, when he came in, he said it's going to be the most improved school in London within 5 years. It might well be the most improved school in the country, to be honest with you.
That's amazing. So you bought this land, and you've one of those pillars, the primary pillar, is how we put the nourishment, the biodiversity back into our fields, how we produce good, healthy, organic, sustainable, delicious, nutritious food so that children can actually go to school and thrive because they're fed well. As we know, that whole system of how we feed our kids is shocking in a lot of ways. So I've been watching on Instagram, I've been watching you avidly over the last few years, and they're growing the food from seed all the way to a market. So It's going via the school canteen, they're eating that at lunchtime, and it's being sold to the public. Yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. So every kid who's coming into the school now, all year 7s and year 8s will have an hour a week as part of the curriculum before they do any extracurricular stuff with us. And a big chunk of that will be learning the basics of food growing. And so, yeah, all our kids now who come through the school will have at some point been involved in growing vegetables and, starting to forge a relationship with the natural world. It took a year from us being in the school to it actually happening. But I probably, what were we? I mean, maybe it's another year's past. But like, we had this moment where I came out onto the field one morning, and all the dinner ladies were out there, and they were picking they were harvesting the food that was about to go into the lunch, and I was like, I almost wept. I was just like, wow, okay, this is actually happening, there's Michelin star restaurants that would die for an opportunity to have a kind of farm on site where you can pick the stuff in the morning and serve it for lunch.
Delicious. And I bet it does taste delicious.
It does taste delicious, absolutely.
So two other questions I need to ask you out of all of this, and it's such a massive topic, I could go on and on, but the one thing I want to know is, you've obviously, from starting this, had moments where you've doubted it, and you've doubted, like, you're up against a lot, because obviously it's funding, isn't it? It's always about just getting the cash to keep things going, to letting things organically sustain themselves. When you've had doubtful moments, what gets you through those times? How do you keep going?
I think I think when you actually find your purpose, then that's the thing that keeps you on track, you know. And there's tough times whatever you're doing, and it's never, nothing's a walk in the park, right? Nothing I've ever been involved in that's been really amazing has all just landed on my lap, basically. You really have to push, and you have to be determined, and you have to keep going. And it's in the bits where it's the gritty bits and the tough bits, and that's when you learn about yourself. And so I know what I'm doing is really a good thing, and I know that the world needs it, and I know that if I don't get too distracted by all the noise and the clutter and the nonsense, and I just stay focused on making this thing as good as it can be, in the end, I think the universe will take care of me, basically.
Yes, you've got an enormous amount of faith that,
Yeah.
You keep showing up, you keep putting one foot in front of the other, it will take care of itself.
Yeah.
So you just have to back the doubt away and just get up and do another day.
Yeah. Backing yourself, I think, is the main, like one of the main things I want Grow to do is teach kids to back themselves.
Yeah, right.
Like that's massive.
I mean, I love what you said about, we've got to get this. So much of how we experience life as adults, does come from A, the home, and B, the school. If we get it right at this roots level, and if we teach, I wish there was a curriculum out there some days that said Monday morning, self-respect, Monday lunchtime, self-love, Monday afternoon, self-care, Monday early evening, just teaching people really how, like you said, to back themselves and to stay on that track for the rest of their life so they can ride the storms. Final question then, Lara, how is this going to grow? I mean, you've obviously committed to Totteridge Academy, but how would we get this in Wales? Where does it go next?
So, we've been very lucky because I've got such an amazing ally in the head teacher, Chris Fairbairn, and the senior leadership team in the school. And also we're part of an academy group, and as a group, they're really behind what we're doing, and they're allowing us to try things and test stuff out. As you'd expect, there has to be a very high level of kind of rigor and methodology in anything you're putting into the national curriculum. So you can't just turn up and be like, hey, I've got a cool idea, and doesn't the packaging look great, and all the rest of it, and just sell it in, to the Department for Education. So the truth of the matter is, I think we've got at least 2 more years where we are. Like, we've got lots of other schools coming to talk to us and wanting to get bits of it and all the rest of it. But like if money wasn't an object, like the way I would do it is I would stop where we are for the next 2 years, and I would really finesse and fine tune our offering and our methodology. And I would make sure that it's as robust and as rigorous as it possibly can be. And I would scrutinize it to the max. And I would, and also I'm about to start a 2-year, deep study with one of the big, academic institutions who are going to come in and assess what we're doing, basically. And what I want to be able to show is, yes, anecdotally, kids' well-being's really, it is up, and they're feeling great and much more rounded individuals, and you've definitely raised the environmental and emotional literacy of these kids and all the rest of it. But also what I want to show is like hard facts on how that impacts the academic output of these kids, because ultimately that's the measure by which you're going to be, you're going to be held to account, And so if in another 2 to 3 years' time, I can, look into the mirror, know 100%, obviously there's always room for improvement, but go like, that thing stands up, like that thing's solid, like we've got it figured out, we've nailed that. And I've got a report from, UCL or whatever, where I can go into the Department for Education and go, right, come and have a look at it, feel it, you've read about it, you've seen it on telly, all the rest of it, it's all great, but also here's the study which shows you that not only does this help the kids from all sorts of the kind of what would be perceived as soft skills, but this actually is going to help you with your academic stuff, right? Boom. The minute you do that, then they're going to open the doors, and then you've got 4,000 schools up and down the country where we could be going in and making this thing a reality. So that's my plan. And it's just about, it's quite difficult because, education, and I believe, there's lots of pitfalls with it, but like it should be slow and it should be rigorous, you know, like that's how it should work. But unfortunately, the commercial world just understands quick expansion. So it's like everybody always asks me, and when are you going to scale it, or how are you going to do this and that and the other? And I'm just like, you know, like kind of energetically and people wanting it and all the rest of it, I could scale it tomorrow. But if I get into 50 schools and then it starts unraveling,
and it starts failing, yeah.
What's the point? What have we done?
Yeah.
All I did was just, you know, kind of try to run before I can walk. And so, you know, trying to reconfigure yourself when you've always been someone who works in the commercial sector, who's like, you know, and I'm a starter motor by nature. So I'm like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And it's actually just being there and doing the work and holding the space and being like, no, like we're gonna check that again, and we're gonna check it again, and we're gonna check it again until we're 100% sure this thing's good to go. And then when it is, then we're gonna go.
And isn't that exactly how Mother Nature grows? She puts the seed into the ground and says, I've got a season, I'll establish myself. I've got another season, I'm going to establish myself. Okay, now we've got a harvest.
Yeah.
So, you know, talk about life imitating
Yeah.
nature. Well, listen, thank you. I'm sorry we've got to draw to a close. I could go on and on and on and on. I'm so proud of you. I think it's friggin' amazing. The commitment, the passion, the purpose. And yeah, thank you.
Great. Come and see us.
I will. At Totteridge Academy, but it's North London, Barnet.
North London in Barnet, and yeah, and we do volunteer days on a Wednesday if people want to come down and hang out. And our website is wearegrow.org if you want to check us out. We've got a crowdfunder on at the moment if you want to help us out. So yeah, you can get all the details.
We'll get the details to me, and we'll put everything up. But just tell me what the name of the head teacher is, because he sounds amazing.
He's called Chris Fairbairn.
Chris
Fairbairn.
Fairbairn. Yeah. Nice work, Chris. Lara, see you soon.
Big kiss. Lots of love.
Bye.